Video. All right, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Pat Cochran. Welcome to the League of Women Voters of the Charlottesville Area Sunday Seminar, How's Our Water and Who's Paying Attention to It? The League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan political organization. It encourages informed and active participation in government, works to increase understanding of major public policy issues, and influences public policy through education and advocacy. And I have a couple housekeeping measures to run by everyone before we actually start. And the first one is, it's a good idea to mute yourself so that there's no extraneous noise while our speakers are speaking. And the second thing to know is that indeed we are recording this event. And so if you do not want to be visible, please just click your video button so that you will not be there. The third thing is, I want you to notice that a chat box is available to you. And if you, at the bottom of your screen, you'll see chat. If you click it, a chat box will come up on the right. During the course of this meeting, we will be putting information in that chat box. And any documents that we might want to share with you, Michelle will be putting the URL to be able to access those documents in the chat box. Now, here's the important part. At the very bottom of the chat box, at the right bottom screen, you can see a little box with 3 dots in it. If you click that box, everything that's in that chat box will be downloaded to your screen, and you will have a record of it right there on your own computer at the end of the meeting. So just so you know, so that you're not scrambling to madly copy things that are in the chat box. All you have to do is hit that little box with the 3 dots in it, and it will record the whole thing for you. Okay? And also the recording of this event will be available on our website. And now I'm going to turn this over to Muriel Grimm, who has done a remarkable job of pulling this all together. Really grateful to her. She's having some internet power issues today, so we'll see how this goes and we'll all work together. Thank you, Muriel. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Pat, and welcome everybody. Today, our seminar's goal is to raise awareness of some of the many things that are being done to protect our area's water. We think the best way to do this is to have some of the water protectors introduce themselves and their organizations by briefly describing the work they are doing. To organize the presentations, we've divided their work into 4 categories. The first is about water. It's about the water that everyone cares about, drinking water. The second, watershed, is about taking care of the land that water moves over, through, and into. Surface water is about trying to stop contamination in our rivers, streams, lakes, and ponds. And stormwater is about managing excessive water entering the system during storms. As with other Sunday seminars, the first hour of our seminar will be for the presentation, and the second hour will be for questions and comments. Because we have 10 speakers in 1 hour, we've taken a few steps to save time. The speakers' presentations will be 5 minutes long. There will be no introductions of the speakers. The information packet we sent out has all the information that would have been in the introductions. Today, I'll just name the speaker, and at the same time, Michelle Kellerman will post the organization, contact information, and a very short description of the speaker's topic in the chat box. The first hour will be for presentations only. All questions and comments will be during the second hour, but you can and should write questions or comments in the chat box at any time. Either direct a question to a specific speaker or leave it open for any speaker to answer. During the second hour, Carolyn Fitzpatrick will read the questions from the chat box. And a reminder for the speakers, keep the presentations to 5 minutes or less. Mine right now is 3.5 minutes. I will be timing and I will interrupt any speaker who goes over, allowing him or her to just finish that sentence. With so many people and so much information to share, it's important that each speaker gets a chance to present. And now to hear from some of the people responsible for taking care of our water. Our first speaker from the drinking water category is Sally Thomas.
Hello and welcome, and a special thank you to everybody who's been willing to join us in this marathon. I must tell you that they told us it couldn't be done, that you couldn't get people to limit their comments to 5 minutes, but we're betting on you. So I've started my stopwatch, my stopwatch, but I'm talking about a hidden resource. If you live in the country, you depend on groundwater in your well. If you have public water, you still depend on groundwater, as it is the source for recharging streams in between rainstorms. Groundwater is hidden, elusive, and somewhat mysterious. It's crucial for sustaining life, of course, and also for sustaining property value. A house with a dry or polluted well doesn't have much value on the market. So how is our groundwater in Virginia Piedmont? It's found in cracks and crevices, not in continuous aquifers. A successful well is one that intersects with enough crevices. Because we don't have the underground rivers that, for example, Shenandoah Valley landowners can find, we are slightly less likely to have pollution in our groundwater. If you pollute your well or have a chemical spill on your property, your neighbor may still have safe water, unlike geological areas where water moves rather quickly horizontally underground. So again, how is our groundwater? The answer is we don't know. It's up to each individual well owner to test or not test, to protect their wellhead or not. And it's definitely up to each individual well owner to keep his well water quality to himself. When buying a house, you can find out probably, but laws don't require disclosure otherwise. But we know the usual suspects for polluting our groundwater. Number one is the logical other part of a rural water system, the septic system. Septic tanks should be pumped. The grass should not be greener over the septic tank, because that's an indication the system's not working properly. That if no one makes you pump it or maintain it, and no one does. The original owner had to prove that the soil would perk, that is, absorb water put into a hole in the ground in a specific amount of time before a septic system was first installed. The health department checks this, but no one comes out later. When it stops working totally, flow will back up into the house and you'll know something's wrong. In the meantime, all the soil around your house may be polluted and unusable for a septic field. That's bad. Pump your tank. The other suspect is LUST, really. Stands for LUST, leaking underground storage tank. It can be gasoline from a service station or heating oil for a house. The Virginia Department of Environmental Quality comes into the picture if a leak is discovered. And you can see the locations in Albemarle County. The GIS layer on their county website is got an amazing number of LUST sites. These leaks can seep through the soil and destroy neighboring wells. Albemarle County had a major LUST in Red Hill, and 11 families drank petroleum-laced water until it was discovered from nearby service station. I'm making it sound risky to depend on groundwater, but it can be wonderful. The League of Women Voters through the years has tried to raise consciousness about water issues and how to care for those private systems. This program is one such attempt. Of immediate usefulness is a program sponsored by the Cooperative Extension Agency and Virginia Tech. Together, they have a clinic to educate people about their well and to test water brought to them by well owners. The next scheduled ones are listed on the information sheet. In general, the water from the ground in the Piedmont is rather soft, slightly acidic, but not dangerous or even distasteful. Many's the rural resident who can't stand the taste of public water, spoiled by the fresh taste of Piedmont groundwater. So that leads us to our public water system and our next speaker.
Our next speaker is Bill Moyer.
Can you unmute yourself, Bill?
Okay, thank you for having me. I guess you hope you can see the screen. So I'm Executive Director of the Ravenna Water and Sewer Authority, and we produce all the drinking water for the city of Charlottesville and the urbanized areas of Albemarle County, including Crozet and Scottsville and Red Hill, as Sally just mentioned. A little context is, I can't get my cursor to work. Screen won't move. We provide all the drinking water, all the water supply for the area through 6 reservoirs. We have 6 drinking water reservoirs, 5. 3 that serve the urban areas, the South Ravenna Reservoir. I'm sorry, I can't move the slides.
Click on the slide.
Got no cursor at all. Let's see.
It's completely
using
under
your
your
down arrow.
control.
Yeah. Nothing will move. Wait a
There
minute.
it is.
Here we
There's your
go.
cursor.
I got it. I got it now.
There you go.
There we go. So we have 5 reservoirs: Sugar Hollow, South Ravenna, and Ragged Mountain serve the urban area and provide about 3.3 billion gallons of stored water. Beaver Creek serves the Crozet area, and Todier Creek and the Todier Creek itself serve the Scottsville area. So this is where we get all the drinking water for our systems. Red Hill is a groundwater system, as Sally just described, because of the lust problem, and we operate that treatment plant. So we have 6 water treatment plants. South Ravenna is our largest. Observatory at the university is 2nd largest. Crozet, we've just expanded from 1 to 2 million gallons per day in treatment capacity. And we also have a small plant on 29 North. We call it the North Ravenna plant, and the Scottsville plant. In addition, the small Red Hill water treatment plant. We have 4 wastewater treatment facilities. We treat all the wastewater, including from Scottsville and Crozet and Glenmore, Moores Creek over by I-64. And the Woodland Mills area is the largest wastewater treatment plant. We treat about 10 million gallons of wastewater a day at Moores Creek. And we also have a small plant at Glenmore, Scottsville, and an even smaller little plant at Stone Robinson Elementary School. So the main things that we work on and have concern about is adequate water supply and adequate water production. So because you can't have water at the faucet if you don't have supply, production, and distribution. And so the Community Water Supply Plan was completed in 2012. Some of you may have worked on that. I suspect Sally was involved. We've completed the Ragged Mountain Dam. That was completed in 2014. Now we're doing a major renovation at the South Ravenna Water Treatment Plant, as well at the Observatory Water Treatment Plant is just getting started. That's on Observatory Mountain. Our 3rd priority project is we're going to run a new water line from Ragged Mountain Reservoir all the way over to the Observatory Treatment Plant. Then we have a finished water or a treated water line that we need to run generally through the center of the city. And that is going to help to supply, we'll get water from Observatory Treatment Plant over to the Pantops area and strengthen all of our infrastructure through the city and in between those 2 points. The The fifth project is our Gorilla in the future, is a major pipeline that's going to go from the Ravenna Reservoir to the Ragged Mountain Reservoir. And that will allow us to stop trickling water from Sugar Hollow to Ragged Mountain. That's the way we fill Ragged Mountain Reservoir now. It will give us redundancy and resiliency, and that we'll have our largest reservoir at Ragged Mountain connected to our largest water treatment plant at South Ravenna. And we'll have redundancy that we can use water at the Ravenna Reservoir, not only at the Ravenna treatment plant, but we can pump it and treat it at the observatory treatment plant, and vice versa. We can bring water from Ragged to the Ravenna treatment plant and treat it that way. So this is going to be a huge project for us in the community. We are currently in the process of purchasing the alignment for this pipeline. We actually have built about 1 mile of it adjacent to Birdwood Golf Course, and we've acquired quite a few of the easements necessary for us to build the project. It's slated to start around 2027, and 6 years later we would be finished, is our plan and hope. And one of our bigger challenges is that we are wholesale, and we serve and sell to the city of Charlottesville Utility Department, as well to the Albemarle County Service Authority, who represents the county. And they have to integrate our costs into their budgets and into their retail rates. So I know they have some stress and concern about bringing.
I'll have to stop you now. We did give you a little time, extra time for the problem.
Okay. I'm done. 161 million over the next 10 or so years we plan for infrastructure. And that's the end of my presentation. If you have any questions.
Our next speaker, talking about the land now, is Chris Hawk.
So would you mind unsharing your screen?
Yeah.
Oh, perfect. Thank you. Thank you. Hello, everyone. I am Chris with the Piedmont Environmental Council. Thanks to the League for having us here today. The Piedmont Environmental Council has been working in the 9-county region stretching from Albemarle north to Loudoun since 1972. We focused on local land use issues as well as conservation. And we have a sister or a daughter organization in the DC area focused on similar issues called the Coalition for Smart Growth. As I said, PEC has been working on local land use and conservation since the 70s. This is just an excerpt from 1975 planning documents showing that PEC has advocated for intelligent use of our public reservoir system, since the beginning of our organization, and, talking about the importance of developing appropriately and not developing along reservoirs and other natural areas that provide clean drinking water to the citizens as well as to the natural habitat. Just a few stats here for the rural area in Albemarle. We have about 109,000 acres in conservation easements. That is updated as of 2020 statistics just released. There are 690 square miles of rural area lands in the rural area. That's about 440,000 acres. 95% of the county's land area is within the rural area. And I provide the rest of this data here just to show you that, the rural area does take up a large percentage of the county, and it needs to be protected because it provides a majority of the water that we drink. The Charlottesville and Albemarle drinking water system is purely withdraws its potable drinking water from within the county. We don't rely on anyone else. So it's important to protect our natural habitat so that our drinking water systems are clean and cost less money to filter and produce clean drinking water. Here's just an updated map of the 109,000 acres of land under conservation easement. Those numbers, this land is important because it provides. Could someone mute themselves, please?
Thank you, Chris.
Sorry, someone is sniffling in the background. anyways, the 109,000 acres under conservation easement is very important, as this land provides, natural systems to filter our water and provide clean oxygen. And the rural area matters. Like I said, it produces clean water, and it has a lot of other beneficial, outcomes as well. For example, our park systems, all, in the county, are dependent upon a clean, strong, reliable, and resilient environmental ecosystem. I provide this slide here just to show over the years how the development area and the rural area have been targeted with residential development. Since the 90s, the development in both the rural area and the development area have been very similar to one another. Very similar rates of residential development in both of these areas. For example, in 1996, there's 293 new houses in the development area where we want urban development and we want residential development. And there were 201 residential units developed in the rural area. So part of PEC's mission is to focus that development within the urban area to protect the rural lands in the rural area and to provide, clean drinking water and clean air. This is a gorgeous picture of the Ragged Mountain Reservoir taken by, the Piedmont Environmental Council that we've been using to show the importance of protecting the area around this reservoir and all of our reservoirs, because without providing clean drinking water in our county, we have to look elsewhere, and that can both be costly and quite impactful to the other resources in other counties. Just as Bill was discussing earlier, the next 10 to 15 years will provide a lot of necessary updates for our local drinking water sources. There are other things going on in the county right now that you can follow along with to make sure that we have clean drinking water. That is Albemarle County's Stream Health Initiative, participating in local climate and resiliency planning, and just making sure that we appropriately plan for that Rivanna Reservoir to Ragged Mountain Reservoir waterline connection. So while the focus has been on water quality and quantity in this presentation, note that all of this conversation about water will be heavily impacted by climate change, both with anticipated higher rain events coupled with periods of drought. We as a community are going to need to think more deeply about our water resilience. PEC is working with partners like C3, Resilient Virginia, and SDLC, spending more time on climate work generally in the near future. And we look forward to coming back to the league for your input throughout these processes. So thanks so much for your time today.
Okay, thank you. And our next speaker is Travis Pietola.
Good afternoon. I'm Travis Pietola, and I work as an attorney in the Southern Environmental Law Center's Land and Community Program based here in Charlottesville. I don't have a slideshow today, but I did want to touch on some of the work we're doing related to climate action planning in Charlottesville and Albemarle, and its connection to resiliency, flooding, and water quality. So when it comes to climate change, we often think of two main aspects we need to address, and I'll touch on both of them today. The first is greenhouse gas mitigation, and that's reducing our carbon footprint to lessen the extent to which we're fueling changes to our climate. The other is resiliency and adaptation, and that's planning how we deal with and minimize the adverse effects of climate change on our communities and our environment, and also ensuring that the impacts of climate change don't disproportionately impact certain members of our community. So some of you may be aware, but in the last couple of years, both Charlottesville and Albemarle have adopted strong greenhouse gas reduction targets, aiming for a 45% reduction in community-wide emissions by 2030 and becoming carbon neutral by 2050. And as a first step towards both of those goals, both communities are starting to develop climate action plans. So Albemarle County completed its phase 1 climate action plan this fall, which is focused on identifying higher level goals and strategies for reducing carbon emissions. County is now about to launch phase 2, which will go a step further to identify more specific actions to implement the climate plan and also track the county's progress in doing so. And then phase 2 is also planned to include an assessment of climate resiliency. Then the City of Charlottesville's climate action planning process has just gotten underway. And this initial plan will also focus mainly on greenhouse gas reduction. But the city also anticipates following this with an assessment of our community's vulnerability to climate change and also developing plans related to resiliency and adaptation. So both the county and city's planning processes have included various public engagement opportunities, including broad community meetings and public comment opportunities, and then also more focused stakeholder work groups on particular issues. So SCLC has been closely involved in these processes, offering comments on a variety of topics from clean transportation to renewable energy to natural resource protection. And it's this last piece of natural resource protection that I wanted to highlight a bit further today. So our area's natural resources, including wetlands, forests, stream buffers, and other green spaces, play a number of important roles both in mitigating greenhouse gas emissions and contributing to the resiliency of our community. They serve as carbon sinks that absorb and store carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. And on the flip side, when they are destroyed or paved over, they can release that carbon dioxide back in the atmosphere and further contribute to our carbon footprint. These natural resources also play a key role in slowing and storing stormwater to prevent flooding from more intense storm events. And at the same time, they also help to protect water quality by filtering pollutants before they enter our streams, and also slowing the rate of stormwater runoff and the erosion of our stream banks. So in these climate action plans and community resiliency plans, SCLC is advocating for strong protection of these resources in a variety of ways, including strategies to preserve wetlands, strengthen stream buffers, and protect and expand our forests, and also be very careful about what activities we allow to occur in our floodplains. In Albemarle, it's also imperative that the county retains its strong growth management policy that directs new development mainly to its designated growth areas to help preserve our rural areas mainly for conservation, agriculture, and water protection purposes. And in Charlottesville and in Albemarle's growth areas, we have to ensure that as a city and county continue to redevelop and provide more housing and job opportunities, it also works to retain and enhance its natural and forested areas to the greatest extent possible. And of course, it's also important that the city and county do a full assessment of our vulnerability to climate change, so we have a better sense of where greater protection is needed and the extent of climate risks our community is facing. So that's just a quick overview of some of the work we're doing. But as I mentioned, there are many public engagement opportunities in both the city and county processes, and you can provide more information on both of these processes at the city and county websites in the links I provided for today's meeting. And I also just want to thank the league for having me.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Travis. Our next speaker is Lauriston Demitz. And Lauriston, I apologize when I was switching the text from uppercase to lowercase. I mistakenly left the M in your last name in lowercase, so it should be capital D A capital M I T Z. Sorry, Lauriston, go ahead.
Well, that's quite all right. And I believe Pat was going to help progress the slides for me. And I would like to thank you. Thank you all very much and wish you a good afternoon. My name's Lauriston Demitz, and I am the Education Coordinator for the Thomas Jefferson Soil and Water Conservation District. And that's always a mouthful, so you'll hear me refer to our agency as the district or TJSWCD. But again, it's a pleasure to share with you a brief overview of how the district provides support to our community. Well, the Thomas Jefferson Soil and Water Conservation District provides programs and services, technical assistance, and financial assistance opportunities for eligible landowners to protect our local watersheds and the Chesapeake Bay. Healthy watersheds protect water quality and also benefit the people and wildlife that live there. We are one of 47 soil and water conservation districts across Virginia, and the district proudly serves Albemarle, Fluvanna, Louisa, and Nelson counties, and the city of Charlottesville. One of the many current focuses of the district is non-point source pollution, or water pollution that runs off the land regardless of land use, such as agriculture and urban development. I'll refer to non-point source pollution as NPS. NPS pollution generally results from land runoff, precipitation, atmospheric deposition, seepage, drainage, or hydraulic modification. NPS pollution, unlike pollution from industrial and sewage treatment plants, comes from many diffused sources. NPS pollution is caused by rainfall or snow melt moving over and through the ground. As the runoff moves, it picks up and carries away natural and human-made pollutants, finally depositing them into lakes, rivers, wetlands, coastal waters, and groundwater. NPS pollution, gosh, it can include excess fertilizers, herbicides, insecticides from agricultural land and residential areas, oil and grease, toxic chemicals from urban runoff and energy production, sediment from improperly managed construction sites, crop and forest lands, and eroding stream banks, salt from irrigation practices, acid drainage from abandoned mines, bacteria and nutrients from livestock, pet waste, and faulty septic systems. And the many states report that non-point source pollution is the leading remaining cause of water quality problems. The effects of non-point source pollution on specific waters vary and may not always be fully addressed or assessed. However, we know that these pollutants have harmful effects on drinking water supplies, recreation, fisheries, and wildlife. Roads, parking lots, sidewalks, homes, and offices replace natural landscapes. Rainfall that once soaked into vegetated ground, well, that now becomes stormwater runoff, which flows directly into local waterways. As more natural landscapes are converted to impermeable surfaces or managed turf, stormwater moves across them, carrying pollutants such as sediments and nutrients to vulnerable streams and rivers. Storm drains that you see on the street do not provide any sort of water filtration. The best management practices or BMPs in terms of stormwater are techniques or methods that aim to manage the quantity and improve the quality of stormwater runoff in a cost-effective manner. BMPs often aim to replicate natural processes and depending on their design, can offer several social, environmental, and financial benefits to people who live nearby or downstream of the installed BMP. Stormwater BMP
I'm
example.
sorry, your time is up.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. And our next speaker is Nesha McCrae. She'll be speaking on surface water clean, keeping the surface water clean.
Nesha, if you're speaking, we cannot hear you. You need to make sure you're not muted.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Can you hear me now? Okay, I had my phone unmuted, but not my computer. So I was yammering away over here. That's me there. I'm sorry, I don't have a webcam. That's me down on the Maury catching fish for a program we were doing looking at PCBs in the river. But I'm here to talk with you all briefly today about the process that the Department of Environmental Quality uses to address pollution issues in our rivers and streams. So let's see here. We have what's called a continual planning process, where we begin there with the blue dot that you see up at the top, where we're monitoring our water bodies across the state, and we assess them. We look at the data that we get, and we determine through our integrated report where we're seeing problems, where we're not meeting water quality standards in our streams or not supporting their designated uses. And I'm going to share with you all what we're doing to address those particular problems that we're seeing through the development of cleanup plans, what we call TMDLs in Virginia, and the process that we use to then implement those plans. And I thought Lauriston gave a great overview of some of the work that the Soil and Water Conservation District is doing on the ground to really address water quality issues by improving our management of the land. And I guess the biggest takeaway I would say you all should have from what I shared today is that, you know, the addressing non-point source pollution in Virginia and its impact on our rivers and streams is really one of the greatest challenges that we see in our program. And we rely really heavily on our fantastic partners across the state, our nonprofits and local government, soil and water conservation districts, to really affect the changes that we need to see to clean up our streams. So every 2 years, we develop what's called an integrated report. And this report looks at a 6-year window of data. So the 2020 integrated report looked at data from beginning 2018 back 6 years. So in the 2020 report, we looked at water quality data collected from approximately 3,500 stations, and data from nearly 500 non-agency stations was included in that. And I give a big shout out in your area to the Ravenna Conservation Alliance. I can't tell you what a pleasure it's been to work with them in recent years, particularly since we've been doing a lot in the Ravenna, but really a phenomenal group to partner with. So this is a brief snapshot of our findings in the 2020 integrated report. One thing I'll point out there is if you look at the percent of non-assessed waters, even with all of the wonderful citizen monitoring data we have, we still got 78% of our rivers that are not assessed in Virginia. So, you know, we're doing the best we can to cover everything everywhere, but as we all know, that's not possible all of the time. But of what we did look at, you can see 6% was considered to be non-impaired, where we're not seeing water quality issues, whereas 16% was deemed impaired. And so I mentioned I work in this TMDL, or Total Maximum Daily Load program, and it's really a fancy way of saying this is the program we use to identify those streams that are impaired and figure out what's causing the problem and what we need to do to address the pollution. So this is an example of, very simplified, but if this dump truck is dumping sediment into this stream, basically the TMDL here is how much sediment, how much soil can this dump truck dump into this stream before it goes from this beautiful stream supporting all of these wonderful, sensitive little critters to this, where, you know, you're really only seeing pollution tolerant critters in that stream. So that TMDL is going to get at what that maximum number is. And I just wanted to make sure I shared with you all what we're doing right now in the South Fork Ravenna River. We've just started one of these projects, and you can see all these red lines here show you the streams that we are looking at in the South Fork Ravenna River, including the segment of the South Fork Ravenna downstream of the reservoir, which we've also learned about today. But it's quite a big project area. We're looking at 13 different impairments. So it's pretty extensive. We've had 2 meetings so far, all virtually, and we're having our second advisory committee meeting on February 23rd using GoToMeeting, and it'll be at 3 o'clock. And you all should have some information about that meeting in your pamphlet of materials. So if you're interested, please feel free to give me a call. We've also got information about the project up on our website. Perfect.
Okay, thank you. And the next speaker is Lisa Wittenborn.
Yes. Hi, everybody. I'm trying to figure out how to get to my PowerPoint. There we go. All right. Can you see that? So assuming yes. My name is Lisa Wittenborn. I'm the Executive Director of the Ravenna Conservation Alliance. We're a nonprofit organization based here in Charlottesville, Virginia, but we focus on the entire Ravenna watershed. We focus really in 3 areas: monitoring, outreach and education, and restoration work. And I'm going to talk about our monitoring programs today. Thanks to Nesha for that nice shout out. We've really enjoyed working with DEQ over the years, learning from them in the field and honing our programs to make them more effective for the community. So we actually monitor water in a lot of different ways, but I'm going to talk about just our 2 primary programs today: bacteria and biological monitoring. So our biological monitoring program focuses on those little critters that Nesha just showed those pictures of in the stream. They're benthic macroinvertebrates. They're small organisms that live at the bottoms of our streams and rivers, and they indicate water quality and stream health for us because the different organisms have different levels of sensitivity to impaired conditions and pollution. And we know what those sensitivities are. So when we take a sample and see what's in the sample, how many organisms and what types they are, we can tell you pretty much what's going on in that stream. And those organisms tend to live in place for several years. So it provides a longer term picture of what's happening in the stream, not just a grab sample where you're testing nitrates or something like that. You can see longer term what's happening. So the data that we collect in that program come from 50 representative sites throughout the watershed. We collect them twice a year, each spring and fall. And we involve up to 100 volunteers who have gone through training, many of which have gone through extensive training to become certified monitors to provide that data. We also involve those monitors in lab work. So you can see in this picture, the volunteers are in the field collecting the organisms off of the net, and then they identify them to the family level. And if they can't identify them that carefully in the field, they preserve them, bring them back to the lab, and we look at them under microscopes. So we make sure that our data are the same level of quality as DEQ's data. And I failed to mention this, but our 2 programs are actually certified by the state at level 3, which is the highest level attainable by a citizen monitoring group. And that means that our data can be used side by side with DEQ for everything except for enforcement action. So RCA data is being used for the TMDL development. It is used by the MS4 programs, and it's also used to help identify impaired streams. So the second program that we focus on largely is our bacteria monitoring program, which is a more urban focused effort where we are sampling water for E. coli contamination. We sample 18 sites. 16 of those are in the Charlottesville area. 2 are further down on the Ravenna River at boat launches. We sample them monthly, except for 2 sites at Dardentow and Riverview. We sample each week in the summer, so we can share that information with the public. The bacteria testing really provides a snapshot of water quality, so what's happening at that moment in time. Bacteria levels fluctuate very quickly with rainfall, so they do change dramatically. And that data helps determine if a stream segment is impaired for recreational use. So just to give you a little bit of the data that we've collected recently. So these are all of our biological monitoring sites in the watershed. The red and yellow sites are ones that are impaired in that assessment. We average 3 years of data to try to even out any extreme rainfall events or things like that that may have influenced our findings. But you can see that more of the impaired streams tend to be in the urban areas and the urban corridors of the watershed.
If I can interrupt just a minute, Lisa, let's ask
Yes.
people again to mute their, I don't think people understand that shuffling paper or sniffing can be really rude to the speaker. So please mute.
The host should be able to mute everybody.
Okay, I think that's better. So these, in our latest stream health report, which I linked to in the document that was shared with everybody in advance, is our stream health report. That's where this map is located. And so you can get more details on these individual sites if you're interested in what their scores were. But you can see in this latest assessment that 68% of our locations did not meet water quality standards. These numbers tend to fluctuate from report to report because a lot of the sites in our watershed are really right on the cusp of being impaired or not impaired. They're right between the yellow and green line. So any little thing seems to push them one way or another. And with our recent really heavy rainfalls, especially in 2018, things have, the scores have lowered in the last year or two. This is our bacteria. These are bacteria sites, the orange dots. So you can see most of them are in Charlottesville, and then there are the two that are lower down in Fluvanna County at the Palmyra boat launch and the Crofton boat launch area. And we have most of our streams that we sample for bacteria are impaired for recreational use. More than 10% of the samples we collect at those sites are over the limit that the state allows. So we collect at these sites, and we also collect at a few random sites each month just to get a snapshot of what is going on in other places. And through those efforts, we've actually been able to identify some undetected sewer leaks and get the city to repair those. So that program's been very effective in that way. And I'll probably just stop there and answer any questions at the end.
Okay, thank you. Yes, I was just about to tell you your time was up. Thanks a lot.
Thanks.
And now we're moving on to the last category, the stormwater. Our first speaker in that category is Laurel Williamson.
Hi there. Was there not somebody right before me?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, I'm sorry. Thank you. The next speaker was Donna Shaughnessy. I'm sorry. All right. Yeah, Donna, are you there?
I am.
I'm sorry.
Yeah. Okay. I was all primed. So, okay. Hi. I'm just. You can see this, and I'm going to move on quickly here. I think I am. So I was going to say just some of the few photos from some of the river cleanups and stream cleanups that we've done. A couple of League of Women Voters people are appearing in these, and I'll just note that you can be doing these kinds of cleanups on land, from a paddleboard, in the water, whatever, and in all times of year. So, moving on. So there's lots of opportunities. Most of my cleanups have been done through the Nature Conservancy because we're working on the Meadow Creek stream upgrade project, but I've done some through Rivanna Conservation Alliance, James River Association, and all these other groups. So the only one I have data on right now is for the last 5 years. Those of us doing it with the Nature Conservancy have cleaned up about 5.5 tons of trash, which is a lot of trash. And so it's a great opportunity to do it. James River Association has the River Rat program, so you can actually document trash that you pick up along the river, on the James River. And I'm going to move on shortly. So also talk about plastic bags. Right now, I'm sure you all know we're just drowning in plastic, and it's getting worse every year. The average American uses 1,500 plastic bags every year. So the help is on the way, though. Last year, the General Assembly passed a bill to allow localities to charge a fee on plastic bags, and with the goal, hopefully, of reducing plastic pollution. Everybody was ready to go start on it. Fairfax County was ready to jump on it. They've got all the ordinances passed and all, but then pandemic kind of slowed everyone down. The Piedmont Environmental Council has commissioned a study of the issue so that Charlottesville and Albemarle can be ready to implement as soon as things get a little better out there. So there's links to that. I'll point out that the plastic bag in the lower right-hand of your screen is one we just picked up last week on another stream cleanup. And also here's some things that coming soon, we hope this is going to pass. The next two things are things that are pretty likely to go through the General Assembly. styrofoam food containers, which are otherwise known as expanded polystyrene. The bill passed last year, but with a proviso that it had to pass again this year. It's looking good, but it would prohibit the big chain restaurants from using styrofoam starting in 2023. And there's a significant fine attached with the money going to the litter control and recycling fund. So presuming that passes, and we should know, of course, any day now, that would be a huge boon to cleaning up lots of the trash that we find along rivers and streams. And finally, another one that's just also gonna pass, we hope is gonna pass in the next few days, was to prohibit the intentional release of balloons, which is a big deal. There's a group called, which is in the notes, Clean Waterways of Virginia, and they have found that balloon litter is the number one most frequently found type of marine debris in coastal Virginia. So if that happens, that would be a huge improvement, and we can really see, I mean, when I do beach cleanups and stuff, there are a lot of balloons there, and we all have seen the horror stories of marine life that have ingested balloons and being full of plastic. So there's no kind of plastic that marine life doesn't think looks tasty. So that's all I got.
Okay, thank you. Now we'll move on to the stormwater and Laura Williamson.
All right, thank you. I'm going to share my screen here as well. Can you see that all right?
Yep.
Looks great.
Great. Well, I'm going to talk with you today about our municipal separate storm sewer system program. It's a mouthful. We call it the MS4 program. Since 2003, the most densely developed parts of the county in Albemarle County have been officially designated as a point source of stormwater pollution called an MS4, or Municipal Separate Storm Sewer System. This designation occurred when a portion of the county's census urbanized area reached a certain threshold of population and of size and density. Today, approximately 7,000 acres actually drain to stream outfalls within that census urbanized area and comprise the county's MS4 area, which is shaded in red on the map that you see there on the slide. Once this area became regulated in 2003, the county was required to develop what we call an MS4 program, which is a very multi-dimensional program. And I'm going to give you just a snapshot of what that program entails. The county has to have proper erosion and sediment control on construction sites and is the enforcer of those local ordinances. And of course, those local ordinances are defined by state regulations. The county staff also, in my division, which is the Environmental Services Division, inspect private stormwater management facilities, which are structures that permanently manage stormwater runoff after construction. We make sure that they are inspected regularly and are properly being taken care of and properly functioning. We also have to prevent our own properties from being a contribution of pollution through stormwater. So we do pollution prevention activities. We manage stormwater through a variety of detention basins and other stormwater management structures on county property. And interestingly, this program involves a lot of public outreach and engagement. And we work with several partners to do that. Another thing that is part of our MS4 program is to look for what we call illicit discharges, which are basically any type of liquid, solid, any kind of pollution that's getting into the storm drain system or directly into streams. If we find situations like that, we're required to make sure that they're eliminated. In addition, more recently, since 2014, as an MS4 entity, we are required to reduce a certain amount, a quantifiable amount of nitrogen, phosphorus, and sediment from our MS4 area, which on this map is shown in green. And this is as part of the Chesapeake Bay cleanup effort, but also we have local TMDLs or pollution maximums that we need to work within. And so as a county, MS4 county, we are working I'm going to zoom in real quick to this map here. These are several of our activities and structures that we're building within our MS4 area to try to reduce pollution from that area. This is really a community effort, and I mean that from within local government, but also outside of local government. I'm in the Environmental Services Division again, and so we are the coordinator of the MS4 program, but our Community Development Department also does a lot of work. They're the erosion and sediment control folks. They are the ones inspecting construction sites and reviewing development plans to make sure stormwater is going to be properly managed over the long run from any new development or redevelopment sites. And also our schools department is doing a wide variety of work to reduce pollution, prevent pollution, and our fire and rescue folks help us look for illicit discharges and enforce the rules when illicit discharges are found. But some of our partners outside of county government are really crucial to this program. We work with the Soil and Water District they help us with outreach, public outreach, and education campaigns. And then also we partner with the City Planning District Commission and the Ravenna Conservation Alliance. I think I'm about out of time, but if you want to
go ahead,
find out more, so here's our webpage on the program.
Thank you. Our next speaker and last speaker is Jack Dawson, also speaking about the stormwater management.
Hello. Try to bring my screen up here real quick. Hope everybody can hear me and see my presentation here. Real quickly, I turn my video on here too. I'm an engineer, so I'm not in policy, which means probably my presentation would be the least most attractive to look at and the most depressing as well. But I'm the city engineer for the city of Charlottesville. I essentially run the Public Works Engineering Division. We're responsible for the review of plans, stormwater management, erosion sediment control, as well as inspection enforcement of all that stuff as well. So what is VSMP? VSP? That is the state stormwater management program and the erosion sediment control program. The city of Charlottesville operates a MS4, which is a sewer system, which means we're required to administer that program. That means that we both review plans for erosion sediment control and stormwater management, which are similar processes. The problems that we're trying to prevent here are the things that have been discussed, essentially the non-source pollution, which is runoff from developments. That's the impervious surfaces. That's the stormwater component, which means in the future built condition that a site controls the runoff rates and in theory, the quality. The erosion sediment control is more of an operational based regulatory issue because that's during construction. That's as people are moving dirt, we don't want that dirt flowing to the streams to become suspended solids and bringing the nutrients with that. Some challenges to this. We're responsible for all aspects of the enforcement. And the way that it works, there's something of a federated regulatory program where the state, through the state code, as well as different documents, gives a list of things that we're supposed to do. And then we enforce it, which means we unfortunately sort of have to interpret a lot of very complex ideas when we're doing an engineer review of a new development. Some of those things, there's also many things that we don't cover. Single family homes have an expedited process separate to stormwater erosion sediment control plan. Maintenance activities aren't typically covered, landscaping, agriculture, all of those things. But in the city, we actually require that to get a land disturbing permit, which is the mechanic we use to regulate these things, that any project that serves 6,000 square feet or more has to do that, which means as engineers, we have to take hydrology and hydraulic sort of metric that people use for larger sites to regulate stormwater quality and apply that to very small sites, which can be a burden both to my staff and their viewers and the designers and the developers, and it can create some confusion there as well. Erosion sediment control also has its own challenges. The sort of traditional engineering approach is that people design the built condition, and it's up to the contractors who bid on that to come up with the means and methods of how to get that done. That doesn't work anymore, especially in tight, small spaces. You have to sequence these projects appropriately. The standard sequence is that you build a construction entrance out of stone. The stone scrapes any dirt off. You only disturb the area to put perimeter controls in to stop mud from entering the stream. That's typically the silt fence. After you've done that, you build your dikes and a trap, a large pond that collects the sediment. And only after that's done, then can you do the work that's in the site. So depending on what that project looks like, that can vary tremendously, especially if you're in a constricted site like the city of Charlottesville. So part of our challenge is that we have a lot of projects going on here. This is a screenshot of the Dirt Watcher program that we created. We affectionately call it the Dirt Watcher. For any regulatory agencies on this call, you can see we have 32 overdue inspections. I can guarantee you that we've had some IT issues and we're not that far behind on our inspections, but you can see we've had 26 of inspections have failed their last inspection. And in them, this is the Charlottesville, all these colors represent active land disturbing projects that we have going on. We have something like 54, I believe, at the moment, independent land disturbing activities. So here's an example of some things we don't want to see. And the issue here is that this is an unregulated activity. It's less than 6,000 square feet. And so all I could do is knock on this person's door and say, pretty please do something about this. Here's a project where the contractor was supposed to build a stone construction entrance, but couldn't access that. So they just went ahead and accessed it right here. And the plans called for the stone construction entrance and perimeter controls to be in place before any clearing was done. And this is what the site looked like. There is silt fence down beyond that hill, but there is no trap, which is supposed to be built first. And so they're actually prepping for a pad here before any perimeter controls are in place. Here's a filter sock. We don't allow these in the city without a variance. Of course, there it is. Here's a site that's lacking silt fence. It's almost worse to see a site where you can see people understand that they're supposed to have silt fence, but this is not doing anything. There are typically redundant controls. Here's another lot in the same neighborhood. This is just downstream of those lots. You can see the mud pooling around this inlet protection. And one complex thing about erosion control is there are redundant things in place. These inlet protection provide some controls of the sediment. And then there's a trap downstream, but as you can see in this picture, when the trap is full, the resulting things, if everything is not working perfectly, is that this is drainage from that trap. And that is all very muddy water, and that is Meadow Creek, about a quarter mile upstream of the Rivanna River. And so if plans are well designed, well reviewed, approved, and inspected conspicuously, this is a regulated activity, technically. And so if you don't put enough effort into making sure these things are done properly, they will not be done properly. This is a dewatering activity.
Okay, I'm sorry, I have to interrupt. Your time is up. Let's see, right now, before we start I did want to suggest also that if there is extra time after the questions and comments that have been entered in the chat box, perhaps some of the people who have spoken would like to add their own comments. And I'm hoping that we will have a little time to hear some more, especially things that they couldn't finish.
Muriel,
yeah.
Muriel, would you like me to go through the questions that have come through in the chat box?
No, Carolyn Fitzpatrick is going to do them.
Okay.
Before we start the questions, though, the Natural Resources Committee has some information on our website that we'd like to share. So right now in the chat box, Michelle is going to be posting the URL for the information packet you already received. The information packet contains I want to point out that it contains additional material and references from the speakers. And that is the information that you might want to refer to in the future. So this, the packets will be on our website at this URL. Michelle is also posting the URL for a list of several upcoming water-related events, and the URL for a list that we compiled of all of the environmental organizations and government agencies represented here today, and also several others that are working very hard to take care of our water. We've included with these URLs one more URL, and that is for a post that we did not generate, but would like to bring to your attention. The Albemarle County Healthy Streams Initiative will have a series of webinars intended to bring everybody up to speed so that they will be able to take part in the public participation phase of the initiative. So we do want to point that out to you. That is listed in our upcoming events list also. And at this point, I'll turn it over to Carolyn Fitzpatrick. She's been taking care of the questions as they come in and can ask them now.
All right, thank you, Muriel. We had several questions in the chat box. Some of them have been answered. Thank you very much. But Geraldine Kruger asks, and this was for Sally, I believe, Sally Thomas, how often should a septic tank be pumped? And I noticed, Sally, that Laurenston sort of answered that a little bit further down. But if you would like to take that question, you may do so now.
No, I think Laurenston did a good job of that. So those of you who are looking at the chat boxes, just scroll a bit farther past that question and you'll get to a really complete answer.
Okay, and thank you, Laurenston, for answering that question. The other question came in for Bill Marr. Is Moores Creek treatment plant's discharge into Moores Creek clean? And I'm going to let you take that one.
Okay. Yes, it's clean. We have an enhanced nutrient removal program for our wastewater treatment process. We have ultraviolet light disinfection. And so the wastewater that goes back into Moores Creek is very clean. It's not drinking water, don't misunderstand that, but it is highly cleaned wastewater.
Okay, excellent. There was a post put in by Kirk Bowers. I noticed it was quite lengthy, so if you all want to read that. I'm going back now, I can't see it. I will find it again for you. But the next question is for Nisha McCrae. This was from Carol Cutler. You had mentioned the Zoom link or the upcoming February 23rd virtual meeting at 3 o'clock. She wondered if there was a Zoom link and where it would be posted.
Sure. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes, so I sent the link to, it's a GoToMeeting, so you don't have to register in advance, but that link to that meeting should be in the packet that you all received for this event. So yeah, just click on that to join us. And I would also recommend checking out the DEQ webpage. I provided a link in the pamphlet as well to that, where we've got a PowerPoint presentation I gave at our first community meeting. So that'll give you all some background if you're kind of joining, you know, we're not halfway through yet, but a little late in the game. That way you can kind of get up to speed as to what we've learned so far about these streams.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Let's see. I actually had a question for you as well. I kayak over at Dardentow Park down in the Rivanna, and you had mentioned that I had seen that on the graph as maybe not so clean or not so safe. And how do we know? How do we know? I guess is my question.
Yeah, so and Lisa can probably share with you the data that RCA has collected there. It sounds like they've got some good data through their bacteria monitoring program, and we monitor bacteria as well. So we have a bacteria water quality standard, and that standard is really designed to protect human health. Most of the critters that we worry about in streams aren't so impacted by bacteria like we are. We look at E. coli, and that's our indicator organism. That tells us if there might be other things in the water that we should be concerned about, things like Giardia, Cryptosporidium, things that could make people sick. So we've got actually a new water quality standard for bacteria in Virginia, and we're still kind of figuring out our assessment process to meet that standard, but it's a two-part standard where we look at a rolling average value and then also an instantaneous value to never be succeeded. But we're looking at E. coli counts in the water, to put it a little more simply, and we do have a standard that we compare those counts to. And that standard is based on research looking at human exposure to different levels of E. coli to figure out, when are we going to start seeing that people might have intestinal distress, infections, things like that. So it's risk-based. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, and I had also written down that it was a question for Lisa as well. So thank you. And Lisa, do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, definitely. I'm looking at the data from our most recent stream health report, and it looks like at Darden Cow, 75% of our samples were under the threshold. So 75% of the time it was safe for recreation, 25% of the time you wouldn't want to do body contact kind of recreation. But I will just point out that the values range dramatically. In dry conditions, the levels in the river tend to be really quite low, and it's really only after rainstorms that the levels spike. So my rule of thumb is don't go swimming if the water looks like chocolate milk. Otherwise, you're probably okay.
Okay.
Just stay out of the water after a heavy rainstorm.
Excellent. All right. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
I did also find Kurt Bowers had put in quite a bit of information about a drought and in the mid-2000s. And I don't see a question in there. Kurt, do you want to explain that, or I don't know where he is. No? Okay. I don't see him anywhere. Okay, I'm going to move on. This question is for Donna Shaughnessy. Kimberly Swanson asked, how do you dispose of tires? My understanding is no one around here will take them. Someone had answered her and said you could take them to Ivy Municipal Dump. I assume that's what that means. But would you like to expound on that?
Maybe Bill Moyer would, since he also is our solid waste authority.
Bill
Okay.
can take it.
Great.
Okay.
Great.
Yes, we take tires at the IV facility. There is a fee, but we gather them and then periodically truck them off to a recycler. We also take them under the amnesty program that's like once a year, or once in the spring and once in the fall, and people can bring tires and dispose of them at no charge. The city and the county do pay us for that service, but there's no charge to the customers.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. Audrey Dannenberg had put in the chat that the balloon bill did pass according to the LCV on Friday, which is great news. That's what she put in there. And I saw the last, there's some questions that have come in since then. But Kimberly Swanson also asked, where do things stand on the county mapping of the stormwater infrastructure within the urban area? And I believe that was targeted towards Laurel Williamson on that one. And
can you repeat the question about the infrastructure?
where do things stand with the county mapping the stormwater infrastructure within the urban area?
I think we've progressed a lot in the last year and a half or so. I know at first it was kind of focused on a pilot area and now it's expanded to other parts of the development area. So I can check with my colleague, Eric Purdy. He's the one that's doing the mapping of that. I can get an actual number for you. I don't believe that it's online yet. And I'm not even sure if that is the intention or not, but we do have a lot of infrastructure, including stormwater management facilities like detention basins, et cetera, that are in our online GIS viewer, if you are interested in that.
All righty. All right, thank you so much. From Michelle Kellerman, is there an accessible map of very small neighborhood streams? I live just off of Barracks Road and behind the colonnades, and there are numerous streams in the woods. How do we find out where they come from and where they go? And I'm not too sure who this is the expertise of.
I can talk on that a little bit. Our GIS viewer, and I'll put a link in the chat box there, it is great. It has you can click on a layer that will show you the very small streams in addition to the primary rivers and larger streams. So if you need any help figuring out how to use that, feel free to get in touch with me.
Okay, great, thank you. Lawrencton Demitz also put in some more information about the tire drop-off. She has a time and a date in there. It's Saturday, April 24th, 10 to 2. The tires must be off the rims, but you can see that in the chat if you want to save your chat. And that is all the questions I see right now. So Muriel, I'm going to throw it back to you.
Right. So I guess, as I said, we will have some extra time, and I don't know how many of the speakers are interested in perhaps adding to what they said. Maybe the way to do it is, if you are interested, to indicate that in the chat box right now, and then we can just go through the list. Otherwise, if we don't get anyone, or if anyone else has a comment, maybe the same way, just indicate that you do. And then if not, we will be going to Pat to close. But I know Sally is raising her hand. She may have
Right.
something to
No,
say.
I was just going to kind of speak up for Lauriston Demitz. I think she got cut off more in midstream than most of them. If she had another minute or two, she was wanting to add to her comments. And I also want to say, just personally, how much I appreciate people joining this effort and coming up with a limited, small snapshot of what it is that you do. And just to share with you that we were told it couldn't be done. Lots of people said, you're crazy. Nobody will limit themselves to 5 minutes with the thing that they spend their waking hours on. But anyway, I didn't know if Lauriston might want to add a few words.
Yeah, it is. Several people are coming through, and yes, I definitely want to thank everybody for doing such a good job to really try to get what they had to say into 5 minutes. But what we wanted to see, what we wanted to show people here was just the extent of work that's being done, and there's so many different aspects of taking care of the water, and you've definitely done that for us. So yeah, anyway, I think there are a few more people. Carolyn, are you still watching the chat box? Maybe you could just call them off by name. I've lost track.
No problem.
Oh, yeah, and I did want to mention also Jack Dawson. Those slides were so good. I really would have liked to see more of those. Okay, go ahead, Carolyn.
Okay, thank you, Muriel. Travis Piatila, I hope I said that right, has a couple of questions for other speakers. So we'd love to hear them.
Sure, thank you. So the first question I had was for Nesha McCrae. You showed that great slide about the streams you have assessed across the state, the percentage that are impaired. I was just wondering if you have a sense of that large percentage of unassessed streams. Do you have a sense of if you would think the same kind of proportion of impaired versus unimpaired would show up in those numbers too, or does the state kind of first focus on assessing streams they think may be impaired? I've just always kind of wondered what we should take away from that kind of large unassessed component.
Yeah, I think that's a great question, Travis. I think, we're definitely hitting those larger waterways, in multiple locations. So some of the smaller headwater streams, way up in national forests and things like that, we may not be getting to. And we're also looking at designated uses. So when we're looking at recreation, in Virginia, all of our rivers and streams are designated for people to recreate in. So they've all got to meet that bacteria standard. So, we're going to be looking at those streams where we see recreation going on and targeting monitoring there. So I don't think it's safe to assume that that trend is representative of all of our waterways. I would hope, speaking optimistically, that, we've got more streams that we're not assessing that are meeting water quality standards. That's my best guess, though. It's hard to know. We don't necessarily target those streams that we think are poor. We want to also look at whether or not we're maintaining our healthy waterways and protecting them. So we do have a process through which citizens can nominate streams to be monitored. And we get a lot of input that way, and I'm sure some of those streams are those that people are concerned about pollution in as well. Does that answer your question?
Oh, that's great. Thanks. Yeah, and I definitely understand if it's not a crystal clear answer.
Yeah.
Then the other question I had, I guess I'll pose more generally. I'm not sure if anyone has a good sense of this. Just anecdotally, running along the Riverview Park Trail lately, I've noticed that there's been quite a few large trees that have come down along the stream bank, and to the extent it's already, it's coming right up to the trail, and it seems likely that the trail will have to be moved due to stream bank erosion soon in a number of areas. I was just wondering if anyone has a sense of whether that erosion the rate of that erosion has been increasing rapidly lately, or if this is kind of just the normal trend for the last several years, because it just seems like I've noticed it more lately, and just wondering if that's, again, if it's becoming more rapid, or if that's kind of just the steady rate of erosion. I'm not sure if anybody on the call has that answer, but any thoughts appreciated.
I can speak to that a little bit. We don't have data on the changing rate of erosion, but our CA has been working on a study we're calling the Rivanna Prioritization Study that involved doing a drone survey of the 5 miles of the river from Moores Creek up to the confluence of the North and South Forks with ecosystem services. And then they've done some GIS work and looking at LiDAR data and that sort of thing. And we've created a map, which we're going to release in the next week or two, that shows erosion rates all along both sides of the river in that corridor. So you can see kind of where the pressure is. Anecdotally, I do agree with you. It does seem like there has been a lot more erosion happening. And I think it's because we've had these really extreme storm events in the last few years. That's what seems to really take out the trees. Our office is on River Road, and I was on the trail behind here just the other week, and part of the trail actually has washed into the river where some trees have pulled out along the side. So with this prioritization study, the goal is to find places on the river that need to be restored, or priorities for restoration work. And that's kind of where we are now, is trying to figure out where we're going to go with that information. So I can't tell you the changing rate, but I agree with you.
No, that's very helpful. And actually that exact same segment I think you're referencing off River Road is the one that I really noticed the other day. So.
Yeah, it's pretty bad.
That's it for my questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Let's see. oh, Nisha did put in the global GoToMeeting link for that event on February 23rd. So it's in the chat now, 3 o'clock. Jack Dawson has a few more slides to show.
Yeah, thanks. I just saw one question about that. I did want to sort of wrap up what I was trying to get at here with all of this sort of doom and gloom photographs that, you know, I just grabbed off my phone this morning. Unfortunately, I got plenty of these things, plenty more where that came from. And the point is that when it comes to, especially in a small city with sort of a small staff and a outsized development community, if you will, being a university town and all of these things, it takes an awful lot of staff time and well-trained people to make sure that the plans get approved appropriately, reviewed appropriately, approved so that the contractor can make all this stuff happen. And so there is, and this is like an everyday thing. This happens all the time. And it's a constant battle. And so I guess the point is that there's, you know, the regulations are great, but to the extent that we could make an effort to upstaff some of these positions and make sure that, you know, a lot of these things are getting done appropriately. It's especially hard at sort of the small locality scale. But what you see here, if I am successfully sharing this picture of my dirt bag here, this is supposed to be a dewatering facility. This is a great example of problems we have is that the Erosion Control Handbook has several different practices to do this. It's extremely complicated to understand what you're supposed to do there, and they usually get pasted to a plan in a little detail this big at the corner. What you see here is this filter bag is way too big for what's being pumped into it, which means that there's not enough pressure to force the water through the perforations. It just leaks out here. This is from this kind of construction site. This is sort of after we did gave them a stop work order, which is usually the only thing that makes them change. But you can see this is quite a large project. There's millions of dollars of infrastructure being built right there, and they're pumping all of that water. And if we don't come and look at what they're doing, they'll essentially pump that into a storm drain. So this is what we cooked up. It's much closer to the state detail with your filter bag here. The straw bale is providing further filtration with the filter fabric here along the edges. And this is what the inlet just downstream of that looked like before we shut them down and had them redo that. Here's an example of a site I walked just last week where the developer wanted their erosion control bonds back. They wanted to close out this project. Obviously, the requirement for that is vegetative stabilization that will inhibit erosion. Here's the same project. The as-built plans for this stormwater facility said that all of the pipes or all of the roof water was conveyed to a stormwater facility through pipes. The stormwater facility had one inlet that's up on this parking level. This right here is actually a scupper drain from the roof leaders. You can see it's not only not piped, but it falls 12 feet through the air before it flows away. This is a relatively completed neighborhood. It looks pretty good. There are 2 lots under construction way in the back. You can see this water is relatively clear here. Those 2 houses have made all of this situation. And this actually goes into a completed stormwater facility that should not be seeing sediment-laden water. And then just to spread out the blame some, this is one of our local crews doing some work in the street. And yeah, we had a chat about that one, as you can imagine. So that's all I have. I'm happy to answer any other questions anybody may have.
Okay, any other questions for him? All right, thank you very much. And Laura,
yeah.
I'm sorry, Sally?
Yeah, I was going to ask Mr. Dawson if you think the problem is, I mean, you pointed out you're an engineer, so you see when it's all failed, but is the failure in policy or is the failure in staffing? And without, you know, insulting your superiors or losing your job, can you say if a group like the League of Women Voters wanted to pressure for improvement to those situations, where would we apply the pressure?
That is an excellent question. No, there's plenty of blame to go around this process. It's extremely hard. You know, hydrology is not a black and white science. There's lots of gray in hydrology. And when when you create regulatory parameters around sort of a gray area science, and again, a lot of this stuff was cooked up in the 80s around 20-acre developments where you have a stream on the east bank of your development and the west bank. How much water goes to the east, how much goes to the west? Don't buck grade and put all of it in and overwhelm the stream. And those were all good ideas, and they've been refined since, but it is very hard. You know, if you're doing a Chick-fil-A in the city of Charlottesville and you're just doing a pad site, you essentially have to pay your engineer to do the same. If it breaks and goes into 2 different storm drain systems, you have to essentially do the same amount of H&H analysis for that project as if you had a 5-acre subdivision in the county and you had 2 site outfalls. And so it's really sort of the local culture through both the engineers in the development realm. It takes a while to get up to speed how to do that. When I've been in Charlottesville 2 years now. And when I got here, I was amazed how the erosion sediment control was really a little behind modern convention in regards to requiring people to phase their projects. So that you'd get a plan prepared by an engineer and it would say, first stage is put the silt fence up, second phase build building. And you know, that's a 2-year project with, there's lots of opportunities for mud to flow out of there. So it's easy, you know, we have a regulated number of times we have to inspect the sites. It would be easy for me to check all of the boxes on the sites and make sure everything gets inspected in time. It's much, much harder to make sure everything is adequately inspected and that we give out inspection reports with meaningful remedial actions on there to make sure that everybody's engaged both in doing the right thing. There's a lot, if it's cheaper for them to pay the $150 reinspection fee it takes us to come back, they're not going to do it until we say we're going to shut you down next week. So it's your standard regulatory, you know, issues with capitalism here, with the complication that there's a layer of professional services in there that's a complicated thing to regulate, review, approve, and you know, there's lots of developers always have a voice as well all the time, and nobody wants to listen to me talk about why you should further sequence your erosion sediment control plans, blah, 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 when they're on their 3rd review and it's taken 2 months and all these other things. So I don't have an answer for you, I guess, after all of that.
Yeah, but understandable.
Okay.
I think Lauriston wanted to say.
Yeah, Lauriston Demitz does have more to add, so thank you.
Lauriston?
Thank you. Well, you know, historically, the Soil and Water Conservation District has been mostly well known for their assistance to the agricultural community by providing technical and financial resources. Excuse me. Maybe I should have stayed muted. to assist farmers in managing their lands to protect the soil and the water resources while still maximizing their productivity. But I wanted to bring to your attention that there are, while agriculture is, while ag is king, there are a number of other urban programs that are specifically for homeowners. The Virginia Conservation Assistance Program is known as VCAP. It's a cost share program for residents or other developed land uses, and this is another program that provides financial and technical and educational assistance to the property owners who would install best management practices. And there is another little offset of the Virginia Conservation Assistance Program, which is one for the Albemarle Conservation Assistance Program, and one for the city of Charlottesville. So there are programs available to landowners to help with controlling erosion, conserving water, within the landscape and improving riparian buffer areas, things that promote best management practices that promote native vegetation and wildlife habitats, pollinator habitats, and things that practices that can treat and control stormwater runoff. And some of those things are rain gardens, permeable pavers, green roofs. There's infiltration chambers. There are a number of other practices that are available. And if you have your house for more, if you've owned your home for more than 3 years, you may very well be eligible for some of these programs. And certainly no one best management practice can solve all these issues that's related to the stormwater runoff. But the important thing to remember is every effort helps, and any practice or combination of practices that you can contribute on your property, it has a real positive impact on water quality and the quantity of related problems, and will benefit you and the environment. It's nice to see as many presenters that are here today together, because I really feel that the work that we do, we truly complement one another, and it makes our efforts more broad reaching, and it strengthens and improves our work. And we can rely on one another to get a lot of this work done. And I think we're making a lot of good progress. We've got ways to go, but it's good progress. It's good work. Thank you.
Thank you, Lawrencetown. And Lisa Wittenborn has one last quick comment.
Yeah, I just wanted to go back to the question about Morris Creek, because we are finishing up a study right now that we're calling our benthic trends analysis. Our science advisory committee has helped us look at the last 15 years of data we have in our biological monitoring program to see if we can identify any statistically significant changes for better or worse at the different sites. And Morris Creek, we have found it to be improving by about a point a year out of a 100-point scale. And that was statistically significant at the 0.01 level. And we think that's due to the upgrades at the wastewater treatment plant there and the enhanced nutrient removal technology they put in was that about 10 years ago, I think. The other site where we've seen improvements are on Meadow Creek, which is downstream of some of the big stream restoration projects. So there are things happening in the watershed that we are able to kind of point to and showing some improvements in our streams. That's all.
Good news, Lisa. Thank you.
Great, thank you all. And Muriel, that is, I have one more. Okay, Rebecca Thomas would like to ask a quick question.
And I just remembered, I'm too long to write down, very much quicker to say. Everybody in Greenbrier has just thrived as never before in Greenbrier Park with Meadow Creek flowing through. It also means we get to notice more than we ever noticed before. And when I inquired, is anybody minding the store, to monitor the sort of physical changes in Meadow Creek as it flows through and gouges parts of the bank, and trees seem to be blocking even the railroad viaduct. And in a storm, the water just creates a lake down on the eastern end towards the railroad viaduct, and the boardwalk is underwater, et cetera, and so forth. I asked who was minding the store, and the answer was Parks and Rec. I called, I think I called the Nature Conservancy, who restored the stream. And I'm not sure who directed me to Parks and Rec, but who does check on some of these kind of public and nonprofit projects to see that they're holding up? Is somebody in there monitoring new trees that have fallen across Meadow Creek? Because I think that every now and then it just gets dammed up.
Yes, so this is Jack Dawson, and I'm the city engineer for the city of Charlottesville again. Parks manages all of those properties. When, I'm not sure, we've had a few stream restorations in the city. The one that I was involved in was on Meadow Creek near Mickey Drive. I believe there's a few more pending. When they do a stream restoration though, there's a mandatory, because the state, they're almost always grant funded, and the state has, I believe it's a 5-year monitoring plan to go and check on all of those things to make sure all of the things that they put in the stream to mitigate the erosion and whatnot are holding up. And I know, for example, the one that we recently completed at Meadow Creek, was as a result of a failed restoration several years before, and they came back to redo that. And I can tell you, like, for example, we haven't given them their bond money back because they haven't finished mulching all the trees there, which is the last thing they need to do. So there is a monitoring setup for stream restoration projects. But when it comes to a general stream on public property somewhere, there is nobody doing that unless we're doing an evaluation of what streams need attention. But I can tell you, being in charge of most of the drainage issues in the city of Charlottesville, if we wanted to fix them, it would be a $1 trillion effort to fix all these problems. So Parks manages that. And if it is a restoration, then there is a consultant that's on a contract to make sure that the performance metrics are met. But that's general. I can't speak to that specifically.
Okay, thank you.
All right, and Muriel, that is the end of the questions in the chat box.
Okay, I think then if nobody else has any more questions, I want to thank everybody for your presentations. It's really been interesting. And we appreciate your taking part in this and limiting yourselves to 5 minutes. And thank you again. And I'll turn it over to Pat then to close out the meeting. Is she there?
I just want to remind everybody, thank everyone and remind everybody, there's so much good information in that chat box today. Make sure that you go to the very bottom of the chat box, and you will see that there's a little box with 3 little dots in it. And if you click on that box, it says save chat, and it will be saved right onto your computer. So please note that, because all of these wonderful speakers have shared such great information. It was really wonderful. Thank you very much, and have a good day.